Hello everyone, this is Ben with Swift English here. So today we're going to be discussing TOEFL listening inference questions. Yes, these do appear in TOEFL reading too, and they also show up in the TOEFL listening as well. So again, if you run into words like imply, infer, suggest, or even, what are the implications of something? Implications. So you're dealing with inference questions for sure. Okay, so as you know from TOEFL reading already, I've kind of mentioned that, the information related to inference questions isn't as explicit or direct as detailed factual questions are, okay? It's not as clear. So they're kind of testing your understanding here. And whenever you read these questions, try to reframe it in your mind and read it this way. Like, what does the woman imply about moving students to another dormitory? So in my head, I'm going to say, what does she want me to know or understand about moving students to another dormitory? So if you can reframe it and think about that word understand or know, that'll help you, understand these question types much better. Anyway, so let's take a look at this question. So so obviously step one, you should know if it's an inference question, and it is. Now step two, what are the keywords? Moving students, another dormitory. Now the keywords will kind of just tell you where to start reading your notes, okay? Which section of your notes to begin reading. But with inference questions, you want to really read a little bit more into detail compared to detailed factual questions. So they'll slow you down just a little bit, but when you get the right idea, you'll get really good at these and your speed will improve as well. So let's take a look at it. So it's about moving students and to another dormitory for some reason, right? Okay, so these are my conversation notes. This is head of maintenance. I represent it with the letter M, and this is the student who had a problem with their dorm. So I'm going to focus on the M column because, they are referring to the woman here, not the male student. Okay. So head of maintenance, what does she say about moving them to a new dorm? So I read these sections of my notes. They don't talk or discuss anything about moving. So here, the student says, is there another dorm that's open basically for us to move into? And she's like, I don't know, wait. Manchester Hall isn't being used this summer. They house, they have people move there, like participants in the dorm all summer. Okay, but read further because this is not enough information. Well, okay, there's an idea. So here he's saying oh, that sounds great, basically. It's a smaller dorm. It's a little out of the way, so it's kind of far away. But they could move the affected students, so the students who have a problem already with their own dorms, with their own halls, right? From Robert Hall, that was the dormitory where this male student was facing issues with noise, pollution, right? Okay. Oh, yeah, people will appreciate that. It means the students who are affected in Robert's Hall, they'll like that. They want to move. Okay, so now here, you're going to find the clue. Let me call the housing people and get back to you. So what does this mean? So this is a common English expression. It means I'm basically gonna get permission from the housing people, the people who are in charge of this dorm, and if they okay it, she says here leave me your name and number and I'll find out. So if they do okay it, I'll call you up and then I'll let you know if it's fine and you guys can move into that new dorm, Manchester Hall. Okay. So now we come here. She does not think it is necessary. No, that's not what I read and understood in my notes. That's just wrong. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Choice B. She will need to get permission from the housing office. Yeah, that's what I understood from the text. And that key word here is permission, okay? She needs their consent. So B is the right answer. You would mark it and move on, hit next. But if you wanted to check C and D, because I know these can be a little bit tricky sometimes, students will have to wait until the dormitory is available. Obviously, they do, but this is kind of literal. But what they want us to understand about this question is that, she needs to get permission here before it can happen, okay? Students should contact the housing office for permission. Okay, be careful, they're playing with words. she didn't say that students should, hey guys, you guys go call them up and figure out whether they have availabilities or not, right? No, actually, she said, let me contact them, let me call them, and I'll let you guys know later. So leave your number, your email, whatever, I'll get back to you. So B here is the right answer. Let's take a look at another inference question, but this time, coming from a lecture. Okay, so what does the professor imply? So yeah, we know we're dealing with one here. About literature, keyword. In the United States, okay, that's the country, these are keywords. Be careful of this word here, prior to, before the adventures of Huckleberry Finn. Okay, so what really tells me where to look, where to begin searching in my notes actually, is this book right here, The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. So if you wrote this work in your notes, you'll be fine. If you didn't, it's gonna be a nightmare. You might even have to guess. That's gonna blow. It's gonna suck. But anyway, so let's find Adventures of Huckleberry Finn in our lecture notes. Okay, so you're reading through this, and as I mentioned many times before, you want to have little sections in your lecture notes. So, always leave a line of space, or you could draw a quick little line every time you're creating sections in lectures. So I know that these realist works were discussed almost near the end of this lecture. I already know that from memory, so I can kind of accelerate. So I'm going to look at my second column. Narrator's objectivity, yeah, I know it's not about that. Okay, so who were the key players? And I remember, like in a previous question, they basically had a question related to Rebecca Harding Davis, and then later on they talk about Mark Twain right after her. So I'm going to keep going. Okay, so here's the bit about Mark Twain. It's quite literally, I believe, the last paragraph in this particular lecture. So I'm going to begin reading to see what they basically mentioned about this situation. Now, keep in mind, guys. So when you read this, you want to tell yourself, what does the professor want us to understand about literature in the United States prior to da-da-da, right? Prior to this book. Think of it that way. So, okay, Mark Twain, there we go. I'm sure you read or heard from about his familiar book, The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. And Twain's style, you can even write this as TW. I have it as T because I'm repeating. It's about verisimilitude. So that was a key concept. The realistic way characters act and talk. Again, the redefining verisimilitude in case we forgot. Now here, pay attention to this part here. This is a contrast. And one thing that'll help you a lot with inference questions is if you run into transition words. Okay, so transition devices like contrast or however, for example, transition words can make it easier to understand what's going on here. So this was a contrast to earlier writers who, I can guess that from memory, in the US, tried to emulate. That's our keyword here, guys. That's going to help us figure this one out. What does emulate mean? To copy someone, to copy something, to imitate someone or something, right? So who tried to emulate, tried to copy or imitate British writers to be elegant, okay? To be fancy, to be elegant at the expense of realism, okay? At the cost of realism. Critics will tell you that American literature began with that book. Okay, this part helps a little bit too, but the key word that gave it away for me was writers of the US, America, tried to emulate the British writers. They tried to copy them. So how is this going to help me? Let's see. Choice A, it did not yet have a distinct American style. What didn't it have, right? So they're referring to literature in the United States. That's true. Choice A is the right answer because they said prior to The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. So once Mark Twain wrote this book, it did have this, unique style. He didn't copy any British writers or other writers from other countries. So, whereas the other American writers before his time, this book, they did. They tried to be more like British writers. They emulated them. Now let's just check choice B, C, and D just to be sure. Inference questions can sometimes be tricky. Very few books were published. They did not mention that at all. That's totally off. You should eliminate that in 1 second. Romanticism and realism had started to combine. Where did they mention that? Come on. No. British authors were using realism more than... This is a false comparison. Common trap in both reading and listening sections, so be aware of it. They didn't even state this at all. So this is false information. Yeah, they did mention British authors, American authors, but this information about them is wrong, okay? So choice A is your right answer. I hope you enjoyed this one, guys. Please like, share, and subscribe. And don't forget to hit the cow notification bell, and I'll see you in the next one.